After working with tens of thousands of creatives over the years, I have seen one thing become the big elephant in the room for so many of them. And that is a fear of visibility. Now, I believe that one of the reasons why artists hide or creatives hide or people are not showing up in their natural gifts and creative strengths is because, in a way, they're sort of afraid to be seen. And that fear of being seen really has nothing to do with the fear of being seen and everything to do with the nervous system. Hey there, I'm Tracy Matthews. I am the host of the Creatives Rule the World podcast, best-selling author of The Desire Brand Effect, and I help creative business owners, founders, artists, makers of all types build wealth with their creative genius. And today on the show, I have a very special guest. Her name is Anna Holtzman, and she is a therapist who primarily deals with visibility issues for creative types. So you are going to love this episode. It is an incredible journey that we're going to go on. Anna shares a remarkable story about how she started her life as an artist and what that looked like and how she started to feel her first fear of visibility moment and so much more. So let's dive into this episode with Anna Holtzman. I am so excited to have Anna Holtzman on the show. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me here, Tracy.
Really, when you reached out to me about being on my podcast, I was like, well, tell me more, because we were talking a little bit. We have a friend in common who is a previous student of ours, Angela Monaco, and I was really interested to hear a little bit more about your work because you focus specifically on nervous system calibration around visibility. And that is one thing that I think a lot of creatives shy away from. It's like they have a great product, they have all these goals, they have all these things that they want to do, but then when it's time to show up and sell, or time to show up and be on Instagram or do whatever they need to do or go on a stage and speak or any of these things, they're hiding. Sometimes I do it too.
I mean, I think we all want to hide under the bed sometimes.
So I would love to know a little bit more about your journey and how you kind of got into this work. So tell me more.
Yeah. So I immediately loved your story the first time I listened to you on a podcast, because you have so many different stages to your journey.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a whole bunch of pivots in my professional journey, and it's telling a little bit about those will lead us into how I wound up doing what I'm doing now, because I am a therapist turned coach. And as you said, I help folks move through the fear of visibility using tools of the nervous system. But I was not always a therapist and coach. I've had a whole variety of stops along the way. I started off studying architecture in college. I was going to be an architect. Pretty soon after that, I pivoted into publishing, and then I moved from the world of publishing, working in design magazines, into working in reality TV as a video editor. I did that for 10 years. Yep.
Wait, that's
unexpected.
You got to tell me. Bravo? Are you on Bravo?
A lot of the work I did was for MTV. I don't know if you or anyone listening remembers the show MTV's Made, MADE, but I worked on that show for a long time.
What's that show about?
I worked on a lot of shows that I would never want to watch. That one was a fun show to watch. It was a coaching show, basically, believe it or not. So yes, each episode would be about a different kid living somewhere in America, a kid who felt like an outcast in some way, and they would have a goal. So it was called MTV's Made, and they'd say, I want to be made into a cheerleader or a football player, or, it was all these typical things. And they'd pair them with a coach to coach them to become this thing. And of course, it was all about building up their self-esteem and helping them realize that, they've already been the person they want to be all along. The premise was very sweet.
That is so cute. Yeah. And I got the chills because one of my missions is to really empower kids to go after what they want and not feel they're weird because they're different, because everyone feels the same way,
I mean, funny thing, it was really about visibility. I haven't really put that together until just this moment, but it was a little bit of foreshadowing. So I worked in media in various capacities for 15 years. And during that time, I was always a creative for hire. I was working for someone else's magazine. I was working on someone else's TV show. I was working behind the scenes. And I never really got into those things because I wanted to be a creative for hire or behind the scenes. I wanted to be in front of the scenes, I wanted to be sharing my own creative vision and voice. And I had many promising false starts in that
Mm.
direction. I'll share just one of those
Yeah.
stories, but it really embodies a pattern that occurred. So when I was in between working in publishing at a magazine and about to make my transition into film and TV, my goal was not to become a reality TV editor. My
Mhm.
initial goal was to become a film director. I wanted to be
Mhm.
making independent films. And to kind of launch myself in that direction, I made a documentary about subway musicians in New York City. It was a very scrappy film that I put together. And I set up screening for the film in this tiny little theater downtown. And I was working at a magazine. So I had all these press contacts that I had been hoarding in my email. And I received a lot of press releases. So I knew how to write one. And I just sent out this press blast for myself and my own film to all the contacts that I had.
Mhm.
And that translated into all this incredible visibility, which was really
Oh,
exciting. The
wow.
film got a full page write up in Time Out New York magazine, which was a big deal at the time. I don't know if it even exists anymore. I got invited to be on a live TV show hosted by this NPR radio host.
Oh,
And
wow.
most exciting of all, I still just like can't believe this even happened. So David Lee Roth of Van Halen
No
had this
way.
live way. He had a live radio show at the time, and his producers called me up. I thought it was a prank call, but it was real. And he interviewed me on live radio.
That is
So
crazy.
wild. It was totally wild. I'm so pissed that I don't have a photograph of that.
I
But
know.
anyway,
We didn't think of those things back then.
when I didn't have, I don't think I even had, did I have a cell phone? It certainly couldn't take pictures. I know that.
You probably had a
Um,
BlackBerry, like one of
yeah,
those, like, I don't know.
but probably had a
I had one of those,
beeper.
like, little BlackBerries that was
Right.
like, we're like a pic the phone can take a picture?
So, I started off with all this bravado and chutzpah to put myself out there and be visible. The film screening took place, and afterward, I naturally Googled my name and the name of the film. And along with all this cool press that came up, there was this one
Mm.
totally obscure personal blog where
Oh god.
some wannabe filmmaker who had never made a film probably wrote this scathing review of the film, and also personal attack on me. I don't even know who this person was, but
I
she
got a
was
story for
so
you.
pissed off that I had made a film. It was really personal and cruel, actually.
Yeah.
Totally just threw me off balance.
Mhm.
And the way I describe what happened next, looking back, is that I sort of flash forward 2 months later, and it's like I woke up from a fog, like Rip Van Winkle, looked behind me and said, what happened to that film? I was promoting it. I was sending
Yeah.
out press blasts. I was starting to submit it to film festivals. And, I guess it just never got picked up by a distributor. I guess that just didn't work out for me. I guess I didn't get noticed as a film director. And I did get to show the film at a few more places after that. There were a few more things that happened. But what I didn't realize at the time was that it wasn't that it hadn't worked out. I had stopped showing up for the film and stopped
Yes.
showing up for myself
I feel like you're
because,
coaching me right now.
yeah, because I had opened up my heart and said, here I am. And then this like pebble came in right into the most
Mm.
vulnerable part of my heart. And I didn't know how to handle it. I didn't even know what was happening. I didn't even recognize that I was so triggered and thrown off by that. And so this became a pattern for me. Over and over again, I'd have this creative idea that I'd get really excited about. I'd throw myself into it with all my heart. Something would trip my wires. And then it was, I guess that just didn't work out. I did not really gain perspective on this until years later when I was already in my 40s. I'm 48 now. In my early 40s, I had pivoted yet again. So I had left television. I had started coaching, and then I went back to grad school to become a therapist. Throughout the time I was working in TV, I started getting migraine headaches during that career, but they were, just once in a while. And then during grad school, they really spun out of control and started to take over my life in a way where I couldn't really function. And it was, a huge deal. And so I was looking for solutions, and I discovered this whole world of mind body medicine
Mm-hmm.
and nervous system education, and started to learn that I had this thing called a nervous system, and it could get triggered by various things into a threat response. And that could manifest in danger signals that could look like a migraine headache, that could
Mm-hmm.
look like anxiety, could look like sweating profusely, could look like all kinds of things. And through this mind body work, I managed to recover from the chronic migraines, which was amazing, totally life changing.
Wow. I bet.
That, yeah, huge. And so that became then the focus of my work initially as I started out as a therapist. And starting out as a therapist, I was also building my own business. So
Mm-hmm.
once again, I was putting myself out there because you got to market yourself when you have a business. And I noticed, wow, every time I'm putting myself out there, whether it's going on a podcast or even just hitting publish on an
Right.
Instagram post, I'm feeling these kind of pre-migraine attack symptoms come up, the spike of anxiety, the sudden swirl of negative self-talk,
Mm-hmm.
the shallowness of breath. And now that I had all of this nervous system language, I was like, oh, being perceived is something that my nervous system perceives as a threat. This visibility thing is something that my nervous system is scared of, and it's getting triggered by it. And that's actually what was happening all those times in the past. When visibility felt scary, my nervous system would go into a threat response. So I started to use the tools I had learned for pain recovery to help myself move through the fear of visibility so that I could finally show up consistently for my business, for myself, and not wake up 2 months later and think, guess my therapy and coaching business just didn't work out. I was finally able to show up for it on a consistent basis. So that's what I love helping people with now.
It's so interesting. There's so many parts of that. I was like taking some notes. I'm going to share something with you.
Yeah.
A couple of years ago, I had a student who we bent over backwards to try to help. And this is maybe like 5 years ago when I first moved to Arizona.
Yeah.
And I remember being in this state, my company was kind of like in this flux. And this person, after being in our program for like 6 months, was asking for a refund. And that's outside the policy, but he was being a dick. So I'll just say it.
Yeah.
And so, long story short, we came to an agreement. Go all in. And if you still don't find value, then we'll talk about it again in this period of time or whatever it was. So he pretended to go all in, didn't do anything. He was actually active in the community. And then, like a year later after that, he was, I want a refund. And I was, well, it's outside the scope. But the guy was just so abrasive and rude. And then he was starting to do things disruptive in my community and pulling people aside, and we started losing people. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to give him his money back, whatever, I'll figure it out. But I wanted him to sign an NDA, because if someone is going to be like, or a what did I say? I talked to my attorneys. So like a non-defamation agreement.
Yeah.
And he wouldn't sign it. And I'm like, so you want me to give you money back, and then you want to be able to basically, excuse my language, but shit talk me
Right.
for something I didn't even do. We provided way more than the value. Your girlfriend does not have a good product. I'm sorry, I'm just going to say this here, and is unwilling to do the work. She needs to work with you, Anna, because she had a visibility problem. She really didn't want to do anything required to market her business.
Yeah.
And they were hoping for magic. So he went on, like, I'm just talking about like that bad review thing you said, on TikTok, and made 30 fake accounts of my face. And then every time he would write scammer, he called it like the scammiest scammer. It was like my picture everywhere. And stuff like that. It can be traumatizing. This guy was psycho.
Totally.
And
I mean, this is an extreme thing. I just want to say
no, but
that.
I'm sharing the story because there are people out there in this world that just want to hurt people. I really don't understand it. I was ready to just go and give the guy his money back, even though it was outside of the scope of our terms. I knew that we had done our part. I knew the reason why they weren't getting a result had nothing to do with me or my program, and had everything to do with what they were doing. But still, I just wanted him to be gone. And the fact that
Yeah.
people spend so much time doing things that are negative, it's crazy to me, because if they just were to spend that time building their own business or doing the things that they want to do,
Or taking care of themselves.
yeah, all
Because
of that.
really, I mean, the
I
way
think it's
that
all tied into this
yeah.
story.
Absolutely. I mean, the way that I understand that kind of thing is, it's somebody that, because we all have nervous systems and we all
Yes.
like get pinged by these threat responses. And then we're having these really uncomfortable experiences in our bodies and in our emotions. And many of us don't know how to handle that. Unfortunately, some of us handle it by, I feel like I'm full of explosive diarrhea and I'm just going to spew it at you as a
Yes.
way to try to get it out of my body. And then being on the receiving end of that,
You're just like, ah,
then your nervous system is in a like threat response because
I
you've just
know.
been assaulted with someone else's projectile fear, basically.
And it's so interesting to me, because I do have a lot of compassion for people like that, because I grew up in such
Mm.
a chaotic environment as a child. And it's funny because I come from a very big family. Part of the reason it was chaotic was because it was a very big family and there was chaos all the time.
Yeah.
And every single person in my family had a different experience. But my sister is helping me out with some stuff right now. And I'm like, Michelle, what do you need right now to calm down your nervous system? Because
Yeah.
the way you're talking to me, and I know you don't mean it like this, is coming across as you're really stressed.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think the awareness and being able to catch when you're out of balance is the first step. So I wanted to kind of
Yeah.
ask you some questions around this for people who are
Yes.
feeling afraid to put themselves out there, or they're noticing that they're going into fight or flight or some of these stages. Why don't we go back a little bit and talk about what a nervous system response is first and why people have those visibility issues?
Yes. Yeah. I love that question. I love the question of what is a nervous system response? What does it look like? And really, how can we recognize that what we're experiencing
Yes.
is fear of visibility? Because sometimes it's not hard to recognize at all. Sometimes
Mhm.
it is very, very obvious. You have a speaking engagement coming up and it's outside of your comfort zone. It's a bigger audience than you, or maybe it's the first
Mhm.
time you've ever spoken in front of people.
Right.
And you wake up that morning and your heart is palpitating, your pits are sweating, your mind is freaking out, you're having all these thoughts like, oh my gosh, I'm going to blank out. That is a very obvious form of fear. That's something we all know how to recognize. But when the nervous system produces these fear symptoms, I'll call them, what it's really trying to do is it's trying to protect you from something that it perceives as dangerous, i.e., being in front of people and being seen. It perceives that, or it can perceive that as vulnerable and therefore dangerous. So it'll try to protect you by getting you to not put yourself out there.
Yes.
So some of the ways it'll do it are those obvious ways I named, but it also has all these sneaky tactics that
Mhm.
can kind of fly under the radar. For example, to the person who's listening, you ever have this creative idea and you're all excited about it, you're all energized, you're like, this is what I'm going to do. And then you wake up the next morning and you're like, you know what? That's actually not
Yes.
such a great idea. And I'm not that interested in it. And I just feel like doing nothing anyway. Like, why do I want to get myself all worked up? That is one of those sneaky costumes that fear can wear
Mhm.
to try to convince you not to do something that your nervous system perceives as dangerous. Some other really common ones are just feeling you don't have any ideas, kind of that fog, going blank. Yeah, I'd like to do something, but I don't have any ideas. I don't even know what I would do or what I would talk about. That's another fear disguise. All of our nervous systems have this repertoire, but each of us tends to have like certain favorites, a certain lever that the nervous system loves to
Right.
push over and over again. So for me, it would definitely be imposter syndrome. Those
Mm.
voices. Who do you think you are? You don't have anything interesting to say. Nobody's going to want
Oh,
to listen
wow.
anyway.
So
And
that's
that's,
a nervous
yeah,
system response, not just a subconscious response?
it's a nervous system response. It's the nervous system saying, this looks dangerous. How can I protect my host body, who
Mm.
I love and care about and want to keep safe? How can I protect her from running into a fire?
Right.
I encourage listeners to, like, if anything is sounding familiar to you or it's reminding you of some other different way that your nervous system tries to protect you, write it down so the next time you experience that, you can recognize it as fear and you don't have to be ruled by it.
Yeah, I know. Cause like, I think about this a lot because you hear people talking a lot about fight or flight or freeze
Yeah.
or fawn and how they kind of show up. It's so funny. Share a personal story of mine. Jason would ask me like a tough question. Jason's my partner. And I start making jokes. And he's like,
Oh,
why are
yes.
you avoiding the question? And I'm like, what is that? He's like, that's a fond response. You're like trying to flirt with me or something instead of answering the question. I was like, oh my gosh.
It's a way to protect yourself from something
Yeah.
that feels risky, right?
Well, yeah. And sometimes, there's certain things that feel overwhelming. It's interesting with my partner, Jason, we're going to launch a podcast together. He's a very intense dude. And sometimes when he gets in his like intense zone, it's literally too much for me. And so
Yeah.
he'll ask really straight shooting questions. I feel an aversion to responding to what he is. I'm not really an
Yeah.
avoidant person, meaning like, I mean, everyone can get into avoidance at some point, but I'm more like a lean in. But if I
Mhm.
feel like, and I can't answer the question, then I divert the attention into something else. It's funny.
I'm laughing because there's a certain way that I'm relating. It's a little bit different version, but my husband, our brains just work differently and he loves to go into a crazy amount of detail. Like
Oh
he'll
yeah,
just
I
start
cannot.
machine gunning detail. For whatever reason, I start to have a meltdown and
I do
I
too. It's the
yeah,
same thing. I start crying.
yes. So we didn't like neither of us recognized what was going on when we first got together. And one of our first massive fights happened when he came with me to an appliance store to help me pick out a dishwasher. And he wanted to go through all the details. And
You just want to pick.
I didn't even know what was happening inside of me, but I was just, I can't do this. Like it was so upsetting to me.
Oh my gosh, I can so relate to you right now. It's
Yeah.
interesting though, because people who feel overwhelmed by details, which I do, because I'm
Yeah.
a very high
Same.
level person, I don't need a lot of information to make decisions.
I feel assaulted by details. I know
No,
that sounds nuts.
it's like, why are we keep fighting right now?
Yeah.
I'm asking you questions and I'm like, it's too much. It's so weird.
Overstimulating, right?
What is that? It's fascinating for me because
Yeah.
now I'm going to tell him it's a fight or flight response and so he's going
Yeah.
to chill out.
And these days, sometimes we still get into fights, of course, because we're people, but at least some of the time I'm able to say, you know what, I'm very overstimulated by
Yes.
this amount of detail. And he's like, oh, that's right. I forgot.
So I want to step into some of the coping mechanisms for
Yes.
dealing with fight or flight responses. So people call them
Yeah.
different things. We can call it fear, we can call it all these things, but I think the common thing is you're going to notice you doing something.
Yeah.
It's probably going to be very similar over and over again, hiding or
Yeah.
going blank or getting all energized and feeling like anxious or whatever it is, crying and melting down because it's too many details.
Yeah.
I see you, girl.
I love that we relate on that. I'm not the only one.
What do you work with your people
Yes.
in?
Yeah, absolutely. So, especially this is for any kind of fear, but we're talking about fear of visibility. So, we talked about some of the ways to recognize it. Then, once we recognize it as fear, we can take some compassionate actions. And the first tool that I always go to, and this is something that I share with all of my clients, is dialoguing with fear.
Mm.
Dialoguing with fear is not my first impulse. And I think
Tell me
it's
more
not.
about this. I've never even
Yeah.
heard of this.
So I'm going to describe me, but I think a lot of listeners will see themselves in some way in this. So when I feel fear rise up, my first impulse is I want to get rid of the fear. I want to run away from it. I want to maybe white knuckle through it or suppress it or lock it in the closet so that it doesn't bother me.
Mm.
But when I respond to fear in that way, my fear reacts the same way that if a friend of mine came and knocked on my door and that friend was like, I'm feeling really afraid. And then I was like, go get in the closet. I'm going to lock the door. You're so
Right.
annoying. I don't want to spend time with you. That friend would either collapse or freak out or start yelling. Like the situation would just get worse and worse and more uncomfortable for both of us. And that's the exact same thing that happens when I treat my own fear that way. If instead, I can catch myself at some point and say, oh, I'm like treating my fear the way I would never want to treat a frightened friend. And then I take a different approach and I treat my fear the way I would treat a friend, which is, you know what, even though I'm really busy, I totally have some time for you. Come inside, sit down with me on the couch, tell me what you're feeling. I'm right here. Whatever you're feeling is totally normal. I've felt it too. You're not weird or broken. You're human. Let's just talk it out. And I'm really curious about what's going on for you right
Like that
away.
movie with all the what's the movie? Inside
Yeah,
Out?
like I
Inside
know
Out.
what you're talking about. Inside Out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. If the friend's shoulders start to drop a little bit, maybe
Mhm.
they don't start dancing a
Like,
jig right away, but things just start to soften just a little bit. And then as they soften, I soften too. I feel a little bit more comfortable with them. And then we're, in that resonance with each other. So I do something very similar with my own fear. I do it through journaling, and there's lots of different ways you can do this. But I have this method of journaling that I initially developed as part of my chronic pain recovery, where I'll talk to my fear and I'll ask it these questions. What are you feeling? What other emotions
mm,
besides fear are you feeling? And sometimes it's surprising what's underneath there. Like sometimes there's anger.
mm.
Sometimes there's sadness. There can be all kinds of things. And then I'll ask it like, what are you trying to tell me? A lot of times it's trying to tell me to hide under the bed and not do that speaking engagement or whatever it is. I'll ask it, what are you trying to protect me from?
Mm.
And 9 times out of 10, it's some version of like trying to protect me from being judged or rejected or socially isolated. And then I have a lot more information at that point where me and my fear are both feeling a little bit calmer because we've
Mm.
slowed things down. And then I'll talk to it like I would a friend. I'll say, it's totally understandable that you feel that way. It's so human. It's so normal. You're not alone. I'm right here with you. I love you. I'm not leaving you. All the things that we need to hear when we feel afraid. And that's just the beginning of the process of just coming back to baseline.
I love that. Is it only through journaling that you're doing this, or do you ever have inside conversations?
So, so journaling is kind of my main thing, but lately I'm in perimenopause, and lately it's not uncommon for me to wake up and like the first thing that's going on in my head is some kind of like noise of
Mhm.
anxiety. And I'm like, I don't really want to get out of bed and go into my office and journal right now. Like, I want to stay in bed a while longer. And I'll have this conversation, literally the same conversation in my head.
Mm.
And
Good.
then oftentimes it gets me to the point where I'm able to fall back asleep, actually.
Oh, that's great. I do a lot of breath work, and I've been listening. I don't know why, but been listening to Joe Dispenza meditations
Mm-hmm.
on
Yeah.
Spotify. I
Yeah.
don't know. I don't even know what it's actually. I mean, I do know what it's supporting me in, but I think his voice is just so
Yeah.
monotone that it just puts me back to sleep and calms me down.
That actually brings me into another tool that I use, which in like therapy speak, it's called co-regulation, but it really just
Mm.
means that we're attuning to each other's vibration. So you're attuning to the calming vibration of this other person's voice.
Mhm.
And this is a trick I use in podcasting, because even though I've had a podcast and I've been, doing this podcasting thing for a while, my nervous system still gets a little activated, to like, oh, I'm going to be recorded, so I'm going to be perceived. I can feel that little, tightness in the chest coming in. And one of the things I do to ground myself is I think about the person I'm about to have a conversation with, like you in this case. Think about your face and how friendly it looks, and like your voice. I've heard it on podcasts and it feels friendly. And then when we get on, let's just chit chat for a little bit. And there's this co-regulation that
Mhm.
happens that is,
Just
it
calms everything
signifies
down.
safety to the nervous system. Connection signifies safety to the nervous system. And that fear of visibility is very much about fear of disconnection.
Yeah, I heard somewhere, and you're a therapist, so you would know this better, is that addiction is really stems from feeling a lack of connection or a lack of belonging to other
Yes.
people.
Yeah, I really connect with that. And I've heard various clients say exactly that same thing. It's just kind of like spontaneously come out of the mouths of multiple people.
Yeah, for some reason, I think there are a lot of studies on this that a lot of people who have severe addictions or recovering addicts, one of the reasons why they lean into substance is because they feel like no one really understands them.
Yeah.
So like a
Yeah.
lack of belonging. That's so sad.
I will just say I absolutely have an Instagram addiction. And I, and I know when I'm reaching, it's like, why am I reaching for the 10th time for my phone? It's a substitute for connection because it's easier, a lot less effective, but it's easier to grab for the phone than to call up a friend or to connect with myself, to sit down with myself and journal
Yeah.
like I just described.
What would you say to someone else who is really struggling to be visible? They think they're doing all the things and they know that it's important to promote their business or get in front of people or do the speaking gig or, show up and make the call or send the email, whatever it is.
Yeah.
I'm coaching myself right now because I'm thinking I have to pitch myself to someone right now.
Yeah.
What would you tell them when they're kind of on this fence, stalling and not taking those next steps?
I would say, well, get support. Don't be
Mm-hmm.
alone with it.
Yes.
Part of the co-regulation is getting support from others. And of course, that can be working with a coach like
Yes.
me. It doesn't have to be that. Buddy up with someone. Everybody struggles with this in some way. Buddy up with someone else who's also
Mm.
stretching themselves in terms of visibility. They're going to be going through their version of the exact same thing. And there's something about, when we in fear, the impulse is not only to try to lock the fear in the closet, it's also to try to lock ourselves in the closet, to self-isolate with it.
Mm-hmm.
And that only makes it worse because now we feel even less safe. And it's kind of this vicious cycle. Once we open up to someone else, choose wisely, choose a person you feel safe with, who you know is going to be supportive of you, and you share that you're feeling afraid. Just by sharing that you're feeling afraid, suddenly now you're in connection. And connection
Mm-hmm.
is what brings us into feelings of safety.
This is true. Thank you so much for being here with us today, Anna. Where can everyone
Thanks
find
for
you if they
having
want
me.
to work with you or they want to download some free resources or listen to you?
Thank you so much for having me, Tracy. And the best way to get a taste of my work and working with me is to check out my free workshop. It's a visibility workshop called Let Yourself Be Seen. And you can
Mm.
download it over at annaholtzman.com/be seen. And I will gently and supportively guide you through all of the visibility tools that I personally use and that I use with clients. I kind of take you step by step, bit by bit. And you can also find me over on my addiction Instagram, Anna_Holtzman. Please send me a message there. I love to chat with people. I will always reply personally. And you can also listen to my podcast, which Tracy will also be on. It's
Yay.
called How to Trust Yourself.
I love it. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks so much.
Thank you so much for listening to the show today. This is Tracy Matthews signing off. Until next time, in the caption below, you're going to see some incredible resources and everywhere where Anna said that you can meet her. So until next time, I look forward to supporting you. And if you haven't done so yet, make sure that you subscribe, rate, and review this channel so that you get more episodes like that, and click that little notification bell if you're watching this on YouTube. All right, ciao for now.